Hello and welcome to Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. I'm Becky Parker Geist and I'm your host. Audiobook Connection is your place to learn about the audiobook creative process in discussions between the authors, narrators, producers, and post-production teams that bring them all together, as well as guests who have listened to the audiobooks and have questions for the creative teams. This podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Audiobook Connection. I am so excited because I have with me today Viviana Izzo. She is the enchantress of bookish brilliance, consultant and PR services, and we're just going to jump right in. Viviana, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's going to be a fun talk.
Yeah. Well, tell our listeners just a little bit about you, where you grew up, that kind of thing.
Okay. So I was born and raised in Miami, Florida. So that also explains a little bit of the accent. So sometimes people are like, you have an accent, but we can't figure out. I'm like, it's from Florida. That's where that is. I am bilingual, though sometimes I totally debauch the Spanish language. And, grew up in a loving home with an identical twin sister and a younger brother. And now I live in Orlando with the kid and the dogs and the husband and the cats. And I've been able to fortunately work in an industry that I've always had a passion about, which was books. I've always loved books.
Yeah. When I was little growing up, I always wished I had a twin.
I hear that so often about, I wish I would have had a twin, or it must be so cool to have a twin. And it's, I love my sister, but she's been trying to get rid of me since day one. Her umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck when we were first born.
Oh, that's a heck of a way to start.
I know. But that's also like the running joke. She's like, I've tried to get rid of you. I'm like, yeah, it's okay. I got it. And it's great too, because you do have that companion and that, someone always with you, but then you also always have someone with you. And, and also being treated the same, just so if because she likes something, everyone's assumption is that I would like it. And vice versa. Yeah. So I think that's also made me the adult that I am today, in which I treat everyone specifically as an individual, and I will do 15 different meals for dinner if you all like different things. And so I focus on individualism a lot because of that. But yeah.
It was probably, that desire all probably came from that TV show, Please Don't Eat the Daisies, when I was growing up. Well, yeah, that was probably it.
Well, even TV play, they played up about all these games and stunts that you can play because you look alike. Like, did you ever switch? Yeah. And I'm like, yes, there are a few stories in which we switched. So I'm not talking about those.
Right. That's great. Well, so you said you've always loved books. Tell us a little bit about like the early part of that journey. I mean, was it just from like being read to when you were little, and then it just
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of being told stories. And I think that's also where my love of audio kind of comes into play. I was always, bedtime stories. We had books, but sometimes my mom or my grandmother would tell us stories from back in the day and things like that. And then I remember the local library in Miami having wanting to spend my time there and just be able to select the books that I liked and discover new ones. And if I had to wait for that other one to come in, then having someone suggest to me, well, if you like this, then maybe you'll like that. And I think it's just that whole being part of something, even if it's not a quote unquote real story, but I was part of that world. I was part of that family. I was having the adventures along with them. And, when I got to go home and do homework and chores for a second there, at least I had an adventure in my eyes, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's great. So as you grew into adulthood, was that continuing in the sort of the publishing or the book world? How did that play out for you?
Well, funny enough, I stopped listening to books and reading right about when I hit about 20, because life and having to work full time and, adulting, there wasn't enough time to do everything. And I think I also fell into that trap of the spending time for me is bad. I have other things to do. So I just stopped. And thankfully, I kind of got back into it maybe about 10 years later, so in my 30s. going to like a local book convention, not knowing that was a thing. And that I was able to, there's other people that like books as much as I do. And that kind of sparked that interest in reading more again and figuring out who the authors were at the time and what I liked, which was, it's still a love of mine, it's paranormal, and discovering all this new stuff all over again now as an adult with my adult money. So that was the other thing. I'm like, adult money. And then started with the blog and kind of going from there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Nice. And so I know you do, and we'll get a little deeper into some of the details of this, but I know you do author marketing, social media. Kind of at what point in an indie author's journey do you typically start working with them?
I've worked with indie authors who have yet to publish a book, and also those that have been publishing for eons, and I do mean eons. Because the world of publishing, and I think just like with anything in life, things change, they evolve, trends, whatever was popular tomorrow is no longer popular today. And how to stay in line with it, and also not knowing even how to get into this world can be very daunting because there's so much information out there. So I've worked with people that are aspiring authors wanting to see if this is even a track for them. And if it's going to be something that they do full time and what that entails versus, I'll write when I can. And even if they're cut out for it, because it's an awesome world, but you've got to develop your thick skin and things like that, and wanting to have that drive. So I've worked with them in a variety of stages, which I love.
Nice. Yeah. And what are some of the ways that you're helping authors succeed in this world?
Sometimes having the conversation of, you are your business. A lot of times people think, well, it's the book. I'm like, no, just like it isn't the mouse, it's the whole company, right? So it's like, it's not the jeans, it's who's designing the jeans. I mean, you have your brand names and you have your general stuff, but at the end of the day, there's still a business, regardless of what it is. And you are producing a product, and you are the company, you are the owner, the CEO. And in most cases, a heck of a lot of other titles involved, because you are a small business owner. And helping them realize that that's who they are, aside from the writer and the one creating the stories, and what all that entails, and the goods and the bads and the do's and the don'ts.
Yeah. I know from my many years now as president of Bay Area Independent Publishers Association that this is a sort of a point of struggle for many authors who just, they show up because, I mean, they write their first book just because they have something that they want to share. They're not thinking about their work as a business most often. And so that is a hurdle for them to overcome.
Yeah. And what does that look like separately? Because we all grew up in the day where Penguin Random House or, Simon & Schuster, the big five, which is technically now the big four. In order to your book to be published, you had to get picked up by one of them to quote unquote make it. And now we live in a world where no, you don't, which I think is great. But there's also, what you're putting out there is something, your name's behind it. What does that look like? Do you want something that's just, being held together by duct tape, or do you want a nice presentation of everything together? And realizing that, it's a goal, but if you want to make this aside from a hobby, what does that look like? And what do you got to do to make it more than just a hobby?
Right. And I think for many authors, there is, while that journey may start for them with this seed of an idea, a story, maybe their memoir, whatever it is, that in that journey of the process of finishing the writing to a good manuscript and getting it out there in the publishing aspect of it, gradually that desire to reach more people, leads to that realization that, oh yeah, this really is more. It is a business. I am the business, Yeah.
And I've had those individuals too that they're like, I just wanted to get that pen and paper out, that thing out of me. Whether it was a memoir, I just need to tell my story, and that's enough. And then even if they get it published and they have the only copy that was bought in their own library, that's enough for them, and that is great. If that's all they want to do, that is fantastic, and just kind of see it made into fruition. That's great. Others might have started in that path and they're like, oh, I love this. The bug has hit me. And then they wanted more. And then having to have that conversation and realization for them to go, oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's really good, I think one of the things you're bringing up is that it's really good to be clear on what the goal is, what the intention is, and that can change,
Oh, absolutely.
Over time. But it's good to know what your goal is so that you know when you get there, and also which direction you need to go in order to get there.
Yes, and then also knowing that sometimes that goal and that trajectory of where you want to go may shift a little bit, and you might have that moment of shiny. And that shininess might be fantastic for you. And it might be the one thing that you needed. And then sometimes it might be something that wasn't all that shiny to begin with. So let's just regroup. Time to regroup and see what else you want to do. And all that is okay. I think that's also something that is important to have that dialogue, that you could have been writing every day for 5 hours straight and now you're blocked, or you don't know where the story is going, or fill in the blanks. And it's just like, okay, where's that goal? Do you want to keep going or do you want to stop?
Yeah. So for like a first time author, let's say releasing their own audiobook, because that's our realm, right? So we're talking about audiobooks. So what, and let's just sort of narrow it down even more, because then we can talk about the different ways in which this might go forward. So let's say we have an author, first time, they've narrated their own audiobook. So what are some tips that you might offer to them in terms of that, getting it out there from that point?
They've already narrated it. Getting it out there is just having that audience and telling people that it's available, and having that. I know people hear that, your pitch. And people might call it the elevator pitch. And I'm like, well, I want to, before I buy it, I want to know what it is. And so knowing what your story is about. And sometimes it's a little hard when you're the one that's created it and how to figure that out in a way that you're not just literally rewriting or retelling the story word for word again in front of an audience. But I think knowing what that story is and that product is and how you're going to tell people about it. Because again, you've narrated now, you want people to buy it, and you want people to know that it's been now in that next step, and being able to just let people know and being comfortable. It's so hard promoting yourself. It's so hard.
Yeah. In some ways, I suppose that when you have narrated your own work, it's even harder because you're not only promoting yourself as author, but you're also promoting yourself as narrator. So it's like me. So yeah. And we'll come back to talk about what the pro narrator next, but in terms of like social media or PR or any specifics about like how they might have. So again, now they have the audiobook, they narrated it, what kinds of things they might pursue from a marketing perspective, or some tips around that, in terms of getting that better, more visible, more discoverable.
Well, I mean, at this point, hopefully you've either started the journey already of having the account up and opening, and maybe had that journey as far as the whole writing process. But if you just already recorded and done, and today you're starting social media, it's still a possibility. The best thing is just to make sure, again, your brand is what you're looking at and what it is that you're selling your product. In this case, it's your story and you as a narrator. And so now you have technically two separate products per se. And then it's just having that information, making sure that your things align, that, if you have graphics that they are showcasing the cover, it's an audiobook. So I want to hear it, having some of those snippets out there and teasers that I'm able to find out. And then great, I have the audio, but don't forget to add the description of what it is from, in the caption. So I know what to go buy. I've seen a couple of times where I've had people posting the audio for an audiobook and not even the book cover, but even then, again, people are on their devices. And sometimes the images don't come across the nicest. Pixelation, for an example, is an issue. But having the name of the book, and even if it's not up on Amazon, you're selling it directly on your website, well, where can I get it? So what is it? What's the product and where can I get it? Or the main things that I want to know. And
so I had to jump in here with the best place to sell your audiobook is going to be on Amplify Audiobooks, because you're going to have, the best results in terms of your royalties by a long shot, as well as, the tools to be able to run promotions and do discount codes and things. Yeah.
And having the author do the homework, there's a lot of information out there, but that's also where someone like myself comes into play, and having the conversation saying, okay, your options are in this row, we have XYZ. And in this row, we have this and that. And this row, we have this. And then what does that look like? Anything from the royalties to how much work is hands-on, customer service, what is involved, how easy is it, all this fun stuff. And knowing, depending on the decision, this is what you're going to get. And those are things. And then, I'm excited about Amplifier kind of coming out there and being an option as of one of those to kind of have people look at. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that, just what you're describing there in terms of having somebody who kind of has already been out there, been doing the research, working with other people, kind of knows what those options are. That is invaluable because when you just go out there and start Googling, man, it's overwhelming and the risks are high because there's a lot of sharks swimming in the water.
Oh goodness, so many sharks.
Yeah, so I just want to sort of highlight that for people. If you're new in the indie industry, you really need a place where you can get trusted guidance. It makes a huge, huge difference.
Yeah, and there's a lot of folks out there that are trying to share the information and have the best of intentions, but they may not have all the information. They may not be fully invested. They might only be sharing things that have worked for them, but are speaking as if they're subject matter experts. Or some skill sets may be limited, but some people don't want to talk about their limitations. And I'm like, we need to know, because especially if you're pretending to be a subject matter expert, and what then? What do you fit in? And there's so many folks too that, especially since the pandemic, that have come into this world as authors, narrators, PR people, graphic designers in quotation marks, and things like that. And I say that because we have so many tools out there that are being utilized, and then having them do most of the work. And then people saying, oh, I do that. I'm like, no, honey, it's a template. You can't copyright a template.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And also I do sometimes I'll see, well, so-and-so told me this because they've worked on an audiobook before.
Yeah.
Okay. One audiobook, that's not a breadth of experience, that's, or depth that's going to, and just saying that it's valuable to have somebody that has the experience and the expertise to be able to help.
Yeah.
Let's just take a very quick, short break, and we'll come right back and talk some more.
Looking for a way to bring your children's book to life in an engaging way for young ones? At Pro Audio Voices, we bring together decades of experience with audio production, teaching, and parenting to craft a listening experience that will delight children and parents alike. If you're looking for an experienced team to bring your children's book to life in audio, check out proaudiovoices.com.
And we're back. So we talked a little bit about, or I asked you about audiobooks where the author has narrated it themselves. Now, with a professional narrator, let's say you've got an audiobook, you had a pro narrator, are there some different tips that you might recommend to those authors?
Once you've had everything done in cast, working with the narrator, figuring out if they can provide you with some behind the scenes stuff while they're recording, or if they can give you some insights, you getting some of those clips that we've, like we mentioned before with the examples of what the audios are coming out of, and providing it to the narrator so they can share it on their own platforms. Because a lot of narrators now have a huge following, or they're working to get a following. So now you're giving them content. And then having them, they have websites saying, hey, can we put this clip on your website as an example? And things like that. And just making sure that they're tagged, that they're, the names of the story and the narrator are hashtagged, because that's hashtags are searchable. And just having that open dialogue of, hey, this is what my marketing plan is with the narrator, and having them part of that journey, being included in there as part of that marketing plan. I think it's the best thing that needs to happen, that I'm starting to see more and more of, that authors are realizing, oh, we could do that. I'm like, yeah, we can.
Yeah. And also just want to say, if you are a listener who has already had your audiobook complete and you didn't ask your narrator to do a recording of themselves, in the booth, you can still do that, maybe even if they're not actually recording your audiobook at the moment, they can still do that for you. So if you have a relationship either directly with the narrator or through a production company, have a relationship, you can still put in that request.
Yeah, put it in there, see what's going, what's availability. And there's other things too, from like just having the narrator share that it was released. I think sometimes that people are like, well, wait, that's right, it was released. Sometimes the narrators don't know that it's been released. And I'm like, well, as an author, let them know, hey, this is a schedule. This is one their thing. I go, I'm going to tag you on it, repost it, or hey, here's some verbiage. Here are the hashtags we're using for this release. Can you please let your people know that, it's available for purchase.
Right. And if you release first on Amplify audiobooks, you're going to have complete control over when that release happens. So, that's something that you can incorporate into your social media and your communication with your narrator, and then actually have an additional announcement once it becomes live on some of the other platforms. And in fact, you could have, now it's available on Audible. Now it's available on audiobooks.com.
Yeah.
Now it's available.
Well, that's actually part sometimes of the marketing, and the marketing strategy is limiting where to promote, to release the book first. And, having a platform like Amplify where you can do it there and you get a bigger royalty out of it is the smart thing to do, is to have it stay there for a little bit. You're driving traffic. People are devouring these books at the ready. So they're going to be like, I don't care where I buy it, I'm getting it. And then kind of go from there, and then do subsequent releases and widen that net that you've already cast. And then that way you have more people showing up to dinner.
Yeah, nice. I think that's really good. And that's not something that I hear a lot of people talking about. So I want to just sort of take this moment to highlight that tip that you've brought up. And then I know when you and I had talked prior to this conversation, we talked about kind of the whole package, like about the branding aspect and the creating this consistently high quality overall package of products, whatever that, might be. Talk to us a little bit more about that and sort of that bigger picture for an author who maybe is just only at the beginning of starting to think about their business, themselves as the business, or maybe they're partway down that path. But give us that big picture and your thoughts on that.
I mean, we've all seen that picture of the printed book be just a bunch of white pages, like by itself, and that's done. But now, like, how are you going to get it out there? So as you're writing the story, whether you're already writing it or you're thinking about it, you kind of have to start wondering, how are you going to present this to the world and sell it? So that means you're going to be, obvious, and well, maybe not even obvious. Sometimes people forget. You're going to have an editor, someone that then formats it into the different platforms, whether it's for paperback or ebook, because formatting is different. And then that cover is going to be your niche, your whatever we see first is what we're going to see. And so having a cover that is done by a professional graphic designer, or someone that has this, because that's the other thing too. A lot of times, a lot of authors will create their own first covers, and that's great too. I mean, I've known some, like there's one author, Danica Dark, who does her own covers, and they're fantastic. But she's done the homework to know where to get the actual graphics legally, and done the homework. So there's a lot of things that kind of go into it that you don't want to just throw in there or have three hands where there really should only be two. And things like that. And then continuing with that, like where you're going to place it on the website, having that set up and ready for people can land and find some place to find you, and into the audio, like having all that stuff. The book cover, remember, vertical, rectangular, book covers are square. So, and people sometimes like, oh my God, I forgot the book cover being square. And I'm like, well, your graphic designer that works in publishing or has had these authors should have potentially said, and did you want to add the cover for your audio as part of the package? And if they didn't, then you got to go back to them and saying, hey, I need to have that. Don't just try to expand it and now make it pixelated and significantly stretched out. Because here's the thing. If I see that the effort isn't being made for something that you're putting in front of me, in this case, the cover, I don't know what else you put that much or little effort into your story. And it's sucks. And I hate to say it, but we do judge books by their cover. We do. And I'm thinking too, it's the same thing like when you put a filet mignon in front of me. It's the same thing if you put a bouquet of flowers in front of me. It doesn't matter what you put in front of me. What the effort that you put behind it is going to say something about that product. So put the effort. If it means taking a little bit more time to publish it, do that. If it means doing the homework, do the homework. Hire someone. It sucks. People are like, but it's a lot of money. I'm like, you know what? You get what you pay for.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount of money.
It doesn't. It can't be.
There are some wonderful designers, that can do, for a few $100s.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So worth it.
Well, it's the same conversation when it comes down to getting your books in audio. There is someone said, oh, it's cost like 20 grand. And I'm like, what book are you making that's costing 20 grand? And who are you hiring? I'm going, is Tom Cruise or I don't know, Henry Cavill reading the book? And that's very possible. That could definitely be the reason why it's 20 grand. But there's a lot of different ways to go about it. And I know that you guys talk about that all the time, but that's also kind of the whole thing about it's all encompassing. You got to pay for a good product.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So essential.
Mm-hmm.
And then are there other things that maybe we haven't covered, but you want to make sure that our listeners know?
Yeah. I as an author, we talked about you being your brand. Not taking any shortcuts is, I think, huge. And understanding that just because another author that maybe writing technique may not be the best, for an example, is more popular than your book, that's okay. And if someone that writes better than you has made it big and you're going, how do I figure that out? Keep working on your skill sets. Your skills are like a knife. The more you sharpen it and you study and you make it better and you practice, the better it's going to get and the sharper it's going to get. And making sure that you don't put yourself into potential issues too, legal issues. And here's something too that I'm very passionate about, and I've mentioned it in other conversations and even on my own socials, is technically it's almost a bit of a shortcut too to try to do it where they'll use a celebrity, whether it's Taylor Swift or Henry Cavill or David Gandy, who's a model, and to use to promote their books as part of a book trailer, as part of a teaser trailer or a teaser photo or something. And it's like, no, that's copyright infringements on so many different levels. And also, you're not doing yourself any favors. You're really not. You're just, if this is also what you're putting out there, then I don't want to read your book.
Mm-hmm.
So,
right.
Yeah.
There are also a lot of authors are not aware of the fact that you can't be quoting song lyrics or, inserting songs without getting permission, copyright permission.
Yeah.
When I was writing my novel, I had some lyrics and then realized, oh, wait a minute, I can't do that because I didn't want to go through the permissions process.
Right.
I could have, but I thought, you know what? It's not worth it to me. I can change the way I've written it to get the idea across and it will be just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
there are, we see this fairly frequently, that it's really important to.
Yeah. I think sometimes when you're writing that band, and they have five guys that so you have 5 books in the series about this band. And so music's going to come up and things like that. There's been a lot of authors that have done this and they actually have hired musicians to write songs specifically for this series and or book. And then they've either hired them to sing during that portion of it, or sometimes the narrators themselves might be musicians and can sing it. And then that's also another way that you can kind of work with these bands to promote your book too. And that's happened in another narrator, Jacqueline Kelso, hired a band to do something for one of the books that she was producing and narrating for. And they were cross promoting. And it was just a great way to show, share the love, do things very legally and up and up, but also showcase the different talents that are out there. Things.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. We're just starting the production on an audiobook that is, it's by Andy Bernstein, who he got his first guitar lesson from Jerry Garcia and ended up doing movies with Willie Nelson. And, so that So, and there's going to be music, but, so there are questions of like, well, which songs can he get rights to? Even though he knows the guys that he's going to be, but then as a composer himself and a songwriter himself, we can incorporate his own music and performance of his own stuff that can still lend that flavor. So there's a lot of different ways to handle that whole, set of issues, but, just kind of wanted to call that out since you'd mentioned it about book covers. And coming back to that, yes, book covers are so important. Like, possibly more important even than how well you've written the book.
Well, you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, it's out there. I mean, think about how, there's some, looking at some of the popular things like the Louis Vuitton shoes or the Coach bags, a lot of that stuff may not be the most comfortable to wear, but damn, they look good in that display, but also that's the brand, and they've worked hard and they have a name for themselves knowing these are high quality products. So even if they put out something that may not be the nicest or but before they even put it out, they've tested it. They've done all this work for it. So as an author, anything that you put out there, and that's just inclusive of yourself, not just your books. Again, you are your brand. So if you're out there doing something or saying something that maybe you shouldn't have, an unpopular opinion, getting into politics, getting into defending someone blindly without getting all the information up front, all this stuff has consequences. And that's exactly the same thing when Coach would have the same issue. If, there's other brands that have issues because they've opened themselves up to criticism and potential to, no-nos. And that's where it comes down to whether your book was created, the book cover was created via AI. That's going to be a whole conversation of no-nos, don't do it. So that's just on the cover. Now we have I'm thinking about, I know an author recently did it on their Facebook post about the frustrations that they were having with getting their books in audio. And they can understand the why some folks may want to do it via AI. I'm like, hey, I understand. I'd rather hang out with my dog than people most of the time. But nonetheless, that human voice is what's going to bring your characters to life.
Yes.
And there's something that we as human beings, you can tell when someone's sad. You can tell when someone's happy, but when they're really, really having fun and passionate about something versus it's okay in our voices.
That's right.
There's even courses, in corporate world where bring a smile to your voice. There's a reason for that. Computers can't do that.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. As much as they're trying to figure that out, but is something so much more, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the narrators, instead of getting upset that there's quote unquote competition or that they could potentially be out of a job, I'm like, well, what could you be doing better?
Exactly.
What can you be doing? Does that mean better scheduling, replying to those emails instead of ghosting folks or not having the time, putting yourself out there that you have availability? I don't know what your schedule is like. And if you're telling me how busy you are half the time, I don't know that you had an opening until you tell me. So,
or developing your skills even deeper.
Oh,
your storytelling skills.
Yes. Coaching.
We just had a masterclass with Joshua Townsend on this very topic, So, yeah.
Never too good to not get coaching or classes. You're never too good. If the moment that your doctor stops going to school and learning about stuff, the moment you probably need a new doctor. It's the same thing with your the arts. I'm constantly learning. I have my degrees, but I'm still constantly learning and taking workshops and courses and getting certifications because things change. So, let me know what's going on. Oh, you're taking courses because you want to work on your British. Oh, I might have a British character coming up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good. Well, let our listeners know where they can learn more about you and the services you offer.
Well, I am all over social media, whether it's Viviana Enchantress of Books is usually how I can be found. I also have the email Enchantress Design and Promo at the moment at gmail.com. But honestly, my socials are probably the best place to find me. Always feel free to DM and ask questions. And then also I do a lot of consulting work. So even if you don't have a full-blown project to hire someone onto, or you're looking to hire and figure out that process of how to get something done, or this is working, but it's not working right now, what do I need to change it? That's one of the services that I offer is consulting. We set up some time we figure things out, we come up with a plan, and then we reconnect. So that also can be done through my socials, and there's a link for that on my bios, as they say.
Great, great. Well, Viviana, thank you so much for spending this time with me. This again is Viviana Izzo, enchantress, bookish brilliance, consultant, and PR services. And just a reminder that if you would like to support the ongoing work of Audiobook Connection behind the scenes with the creative teams, we would deeply appreciate your support through patreon.com. That is patreon.com/Audiobook Connection podcast. And we have some special things for you there as members and supporters. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me and having these important conversations.
Thanks for joining us for Audiobook Connection, behind the scenes with the creative teams. Please take a moment to subscribe at audiobookconnection.com. The podcast is sponsored by Pro Audio Voices, helping great stories come alive through audiobook production and marketing. Learn more at proaudiovoices.com. Again, thanks for being with us, and please join us next week.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.